What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment to talk week 9 of the NFL season. We're going to take a look at some of the trades that happened at the trade deadline and what they mean for the league going forward. And now that we have officially hit the halfway point of the season, we're going to give out our half season awards, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, all of that fun stuff. But before we get started, we are recording this November 6th, the day after Election Day. Obviously, this is a sports podcast, so we're not going to talk about the election. But I did just want to say to you guys that I know a lot of people are feeling a certain type of way after the results came in. And no matter how you're feeling right now, I just want you to know that the Yankees lost the World Series last week. And that is something that we can all celebrate and enjoy. The Yankees lost the World Series. It was beautiful. Last week when we recorded, the Yankees were up, I think, 5-0 as we were hanging up the Zoom call and finishing recording this podcast. Came downstairs and instantly saw them blow a 5-run lead in what is one of the most comical and enjoyable innings in the history of baseball. And now the Yankees have to deal with potentially losing Juan Soto in the offseason, hopefully to like the Mets or Red Sox, just to make it as painful as possible. It might not be a good time to be a U.S. citizen, but it is a great time to be a Yankee hater. And before we get started, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we would love to hear from you. Let us know what your favorite trade of the NFL trade deadline was, how you feel about what your team did. I'm not happy about my team just sitting on their hands, and I have a couple of choice words for Elliot Wolf that we might get into in this podcast, but make sure you guys hit us up. We really love to hear from you guys, and you will get me responding to your emails, not automated newsletters or spam or anything like that. So, all right, with that said, let's grab Matt and let's go. All right, Matt is here. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I mean, I'm sitting at the top of the division in real football.
That's okay. That's fair. I was gonna say I'm actually sitting here doing my favorite thing, which is drinking a White Claw and watching Western Michigan football, who is also at the top of their division. Somehow they're 4-0 in MAC play,
Uh,
but watching them lose games they should win. Yes, it was 14-7 right now, and they're driving. So we'll see what happens
yeah,
against NIU. But the one thing I will say about this Western Michigan football team, no game is ever over with them. And I mean that in both directions.
yep.
There's no amount they can be down by that ends the game, and there's no amount they can be up by. Like if they're down 28 or up 28, the game is never over with this
Nope.
team. So that is there's only one way to watch Western Michigan football if you're a Western Michigan football fan, and that is drink in hand.
Yeah.
You need it because if you're up 28, you know what's about to happen, and if you're down 28, you know what's about to happen. So, but we are here to talk about NFL football, which is what Matt was referring to being on top of the division. Another big win for the Lions this
Yeah.
week. In your somehow your first outdoor game of the entire season,
Yep.
and you don't play another one until like December 22nd. I think you have like 2 outdoor games this entire season,
Yeah.
which didn't matter Sunday and really may not ever matter because if and when you get home field advantage in the NFC,
hmm
all games will be at Ford Field, and then the Super Bowl is where is the Super Bowl this year? Is it
New
a so?
Orleans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Super Bowl is in New Orleans, which is also in a dome. So you may never play outside again, especially not in a meaningful football game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have well, again, meaningful. We have the Bears. Um,
That's your only outdoor game remaining, I believe, is at Bears.
that might be the case.
Yeah, because you're at the Bears. Oh, you're at Bears and at 49ers in back-to-back
Yep,
weeks. But like
that's
that
right.
49ers in San Francisco, they might as well just be in a dome. It's just beautiful there all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, touchdown Western Michigan. 14-13. I wanted to say 14-14, but like I said with Western, you really just
You
never
never
know what's
know.
about to happen. It might be 14-12. We'll find out. I wanted to ask you this about the Lions though before we get started on the
Yeah.
other stuff is so the Lions are the number one team in the conference right now.
Hmm.
Got like a game lead on Washington, who's 7-2. Um, but who like you just took care of business in Green Bay in a torrential downpour, like a huge storm, and kind of I think prove some things to some people who were for some reason still doubting the Lions. Like, oh, well, they haven't played outside, and what about in bad conditions and blah blah blah. So you've beat Green Bay, you've beat Minnesota already. What team in the NFC are you most worried about preventing you
Ooh,
from making the Super Bowl?
that is a good question. Let me.
Because it almost feels like it's starting to become a foregone conclusion with how well the Lions are playing halfway through the season. And I'm
I
looking, I
mean,
looked at it the other day and I was like, man, there's so many teams in the AFC that have like awesome quarterbacks and all that stuff. And then I looked at the NFC and I was like, oh man, who is that team that Lions fans are like, that's the team that we're most worried about?
yeah. I mean, what's crazy is that I think, I think like matchup wise, we've already played the team that I think I would worry about the most, and it was the Rams. But I mean, obviously, they're super banged up. Uh, maybe their offensive line would be healthier at that point in the year, but like there's not really a team that I'm like super worried about because and I know that there is a lot of talk about Ben Johnson, right? Is like kind of like being the mastermind on all of this, but like Dan Campbell doesn't get nearly enough credit here on like being the straw that stirs this drink on always having the right plan when they come in to play a team because they've shown time and time again that like they can win in different ways. And oh, I mean we've already heard after that game in Green Bay like the serious copium coming out of Wisconsin out making excuses or saying like well like the team that executed better won, not the better team. But like we were the dome team that went on the road and played in torrential downpour as this like supposedly high flying offense, and we just beat the shit out of you.
I was thinking about this as a Patriots fan and someone who watched my team go to the Super Bowl a lot of times is there would be certain years where you would just kind of look at the field and be like, yeah, we're going to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
And then what was going to happen in the Super Bowl? Who knew? Like we were going to find out. But
right.
you would just look at like all the other teams and just be like, yeah, not worried about that. Or there would be a
Hmm.
certain game that you would win. And when we would win that game, I'd be like, oh, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I forget what year it was. It was either the Seattle Super Bowl or the Falcons Super Bowl that we won, where we had to play in Denver late in the season. And Denver wasn't that great that year, but they're always a problem, especially Tom Brady playing in Mile High was always a problem. And we
Yeah.
absolutely beat the shit out of them. It was like 30-7. And I was like, this team's going to win the Super Bowl. And I'm wondering if that game has happened yet for the Lions. I don't know if Sunday was that game yet. I know the Dallas
Hmm.
one was a big, like, oh, we always get screwed in Dallas. And this time we just went in and took care of business. So I don't know. Maybe it's the at San
Yeah.
Francisco. Maybe it's at San Francisco if you go in and like put those demons to bed and it's like, okay, yeah, this is it.
I almost don't care what I see from other teams because I believe in what this roster and this coaching staff is going to do so strongly. I think part of it too with like yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl is also I'm looking at these teams And other than like Jaden Daniels, where's the quarterback that's gonna like really, really make us hurt?
Yeah, that's kind of the
Right.
thing is that the
Like,
AFC has Mahomes,
yeah,
Jackson, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, like all these guys, and it's like, okay, who are the Lions going to go up against in the playoffs? Like
yeah,
Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels, who like, Jaden Daniels is great, but he's still a rookie.
he's a rookie.
Brock
Like,
Purdy, like,
give me Jordan Love in the playoffs. I know what'll happen, right? And it's part of why I was like, the Rams might be the team that I think could potentially give us the hardest time because Stafford is at least among the non-rookies, but like he's probably well, like top two quarterbacks in the NFC.
yeah, he might be the best one
Yeah,
right now.
right. I mean,
So
it's really between him and Goff at this point.
I just thought that was interesting halfway through the season. It's like I'm already looking at it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know who. Like, is it the Eagles that
Yeah,
you got to worry about? Is it like? I guess we'll find out the second half of the season.
yeah. But honestly, that exercise just really puts into perspective how awful it is to be a fan of a team in the AFC that isn't Kansas City. Because if you have a quarterback, it basically doesn't matter. And if you don't, like you have to get a quarterback to even start having the conversation, and then it still probably doesn't matter.
Well, this is the problem though, is that Kansas City's probably sitting here and doing the same thing where they're like, well, really, who's going to stop us from getting to the Super Bowl? But in their division, they have, or in their conference, they have all these awesome quarterbacks. They're like, yeah, we're not afraid of any of those guys.
Yeah.
We don't need to be. So, uh, but yeah, interesting exercise halfway through the season. Big news before we jump into the real topic for today. Had the trade deadline. I was waiting for more wide receiver trades for us to talk
Mhm.
about because we start every episode by talking about wide receivers, but there were no really big ones.
What
Uh,
you sleeping on Mingo and his 12 catches
I,
for
I,
fourth round pick?
so when I saw the headline that Dallas had traded for Jonathan Mingo, I was like, oh man, I was like, that's the type of guy that I would like my team to take a flyer on, like a late pick, like a seventh round pick, take him on. He's a former second round pick. He's got some talent and just kind of see what's there. And then I saw that Dallas paid a fourth for him. And I was like, that is an extremely expensive flyer. And then I
Yep.
remembered that a fourth round pick is more than what Dallas got for Amari Cooper when they
Hmm.
traded him to Cleveland and just kind of like shut the computer. I was like,
Well,
what are they doing?
it's also, I believe, what they gave up a fourth round last year for Trey Lance,
Yeah.
right? So they
Just do not give a
they
single shit
spent
about
more
the
than they
fourth
got
round.
back for Amari Cooper, and they've given up a relatively valuable resource 2 years in a row for a roll of the dice on a player.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that if my team traded away two fourth round picks for Jonathan Mingo and Trey Lance, that I would be catatonic on this podcast and be extremely upset. I just feel like Dallas's ultimate destiny is that they're going to have a top 10 pick because now Dak Prescott is going on IR and we're
Hmm.
either going to see Cooper Rush or
Yeah.
the aforementioned Trey Lance, which like I think Cooper Rush is going to start this weekend, but
Hmm.
I just think it
Yeah.
makes way more sense to throw Trey Lance out there for the rest of the season and see what you
Yeah.
have. Because like we know what Cooper Rush is. We don't
Yeah.
need more Cooper Rush time, but like
Well,
see what Trey
and
Lance can do.
I mean, it was a hamstring for Dak, right? That I think that was the initial report. There's no way. Now, it might be more serious than that now, but there's no way that even if he were to be cleared or, or to be told that he can be cleared to play before the end of the year, uh, that he is going to come back and play any more games this year.
The ultimate irony is going to be that the quarterback the Lions have to be most afraid of in the NFC is Trey Lance and the Dallas Cowboys when he's finally good and I can take my victory lap.
Not this
But
year.
I just think the ultimate destiny for Dallas is to have a top 10 pick and they're going to chalk up all their failures. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, well, we had a lot of injuries this year. We're actually good.
Mhm.
And really, what we need to do is draft a running back in the top 10 because this is obviously Rico Dowdle's fault for not being a good enough running back. Like, okay, my boy Ashton Jeanty, welcome to Dallas, buddy. You are a
God.
cowboy. Have fun with that. So, there were I think two big trades. I guess big. One of them is big. The other one is maybe a schmedium trade. But there were two trades I wanted to touch on real quick. The first one was Marshawn Lattimore, the
Yep.
corner from the Saints, gets traded to the Washington Fighting Georges. So the Fighting Georges get Marshawn Lattimore and a fifth, and they give the Saints a third, a fourth, a fifth, and then their own six back that they had from another trade. Lattimore is a good corner. I think a lot of the coverage of this trade has been making him out to be elite still and like one
Yeah.
of the top corners in the league. And I'm like, he's good. He'll help the Washington secondary. Like it's a good trade for them, but this is not, I mean, in my opinion, it's not like a true number one shutdown corner that you're going to
Yeah.
throw out there.
To be fair, he was at a
Yeah.
point in time. He
Yeah, for sure.
was. I will say he has not ever looked like that since Aaron Glenn left.
Unless he's playing
So
Mike Evans.
yeah.
So really that if Washington plays
God.
Tampa in the playoffs, this will all be worth it because
I
he will
mean,
shut down
like
Mike Evans.
there are certain like corner wide receiver rivalries that are just worth the price of admission. Keep Talib versus Michael Crabtree.
Mm-hmm.
That was must-watch TV, even if like it went to overtime tied 0-0. Like just watching those two snatch each other's chains was like absolutely must watch.
Yeah. Cortland Sutton versus Andre Johnson
Yeah.
was a good one. Antonio Cromartie versus Child Support, always a fantastic rivalry. And also Antonio Cromartie versus Tackling Anybody, great rivalry. But what I was looking at is that Washington is fifth in pass yards allowed already. Like they're already really good
Mhm.
at that, and they're 29th against the run. So it's like strengthening a strength, but didn't really do anything about your weakness, which is weird because if you would have told me they're really good at something on defense coming into the season, I'd be like, oh, it's probably that defensive line like stopping the run. And it's like, no, they can't stop the run to save their lives, but they're really good against the pass.
I think that there's an element there though that if you improve the talent in your secondary, it allows you to make different defensive calls to support stopping the run a little bit better. So I we'll see. Obviously it remains to be seen like what they actually do defensively once he's integrated in there. But I would definitely agree that you would think that their focus would maybe be a little bit more on the front lines or at least, like a
Linebackers.
linebacker, right? But you can never have enough cornerbacks. You really can't.
No, it's like if you're gonna trade for someone to like, I'm not never gonna be mad about you getting a good corner. You
Yeah.
know, it's out there for you. So, and then
Yeah.
the Saints side, it's really just you're in cap hell and you're in cap hell for the foreseeable future. So like they have a huge dead cap hit for him next year. I think it's
Yeah.
like $31 million. But
Yep.
then after that, it helps free stuff up in the future, which is they got to start working on that because
Yeah.
they're like 65 million over the cap already for next season.
for their sakes, hopefully this is the sign that they've finally made the decision. Hey, we're gonna be shit for 2 years so that we can finally reset the cap and move forward.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about them being shit for the next couple of years coming up later. But the more like medium trade, not as big but still important, is that the Lions get Zadarius Smith from the
Yep.
Cleveland Browns. So they get Zadarius Smith in a 2026 seventh, and they trade the Browns a 25 fifth and a 26 sixth. I think we all kind of knew the Lions were going to bring in some type of edge rusher after
Yeah.
Aiden Hutchinson went down. We're just kind of waiting to see who it was. My only question is, and I don't think that anybody can really answer this. Like, we would have to have Brad Holmes on the podcast to tell us this. So, like, Brad, you want to come on and you want to tell us about this, then please do. But they got Zadarius relatively cheap. And he's a guy who was very good in the past. He's not what he once was, but he's still a good edge rusher. And I just wonder, I would have, like, if the Lions would have traded more to get a better edge rusher, I wouldn't have blinked at it. And I just hope they weren't like trying to save some capital and like not go after someone like Aziz Ojolari. I would,
Hmm.
this is not the time to be cheap. Like we were just saying, you're probably going to make the Super Bowl looking at it right now. So like go in on this season. But again, like I don't know what was actually available and if there were even other options on the table that were somewhat reasonable. Because I'm not saying like go
Yeah.
overpay for somebody, but like if you would have traded like a third and a fourth or like a third to get somebody, I wouldn't have blinked at it.
The Lions do have like limited picks in this upcoming draft too because of moves made in the most recent draft. So I think that probably can factored into that as well. Um, I know that essentially as soon as Aiden Hutchinson went down, uh, the Browns reportedly reached out to the Lions to start talking about Zadarius Smith. The whole reason that it took this long is that the Browns were just trying to get as much as they could out of him. So, I mean, this is about probably like the floor of what you could have gotten him for. I don't think that anyone necessarily better was available. I like Aziz Ojolari. I don't know that he's necessarily a better player. He's younger and a better long-term option for sure.
I don't
Um,
think long term really mattered to the Lions though, because Aiden
you're talking
Hutchinson's going to
about a
be
team
back.
that's built on development, right? Like that's that we just saw them lock up like everyone that hit from their first draft. Like this is a team that thinks very long term.
No, but what I mean
Um,
is like
yeah.
specifically when getting this player, it's like, okay, we have a
Yeah.
hole this season we need to patch,
Right.
and then Aiden Hutchinson's going to be back. So like
Yep.
maybe we don't need to spend more on a younger guy. We need to fill in for this season. And then
Yep.
Zadarius Smith is probably going to be gone.
Yeah.
So
But I think too that where a lot of people are reading is they they want to find that replacement for Hutch, and that person just isn't out there, right? And if they are out there, you're not trading that person away because if you have that guy, you hang on to them with your to like to the grave, right?
well, that's like the
Um,
Miles Garrett trade that was proposed on
yeah,
some ESPN show where they're like, it's Jameer Gibbs and three first and a second, and they
yeah,
get Miles Garrett. It's like, yeah, that probably is what Miles Garrett would cost, but you don't do that.
yeah, right. Well, you look at this trade, and it's not an Aiden Hutchinson replacement. It's a Marcus Davenport replacement, and like this is a guy that's gonna come in. He's gonna set the edge. He's gonna, you know, keep contain, which I've kind of gotten burned on a couple times in the last few weeks, and Yeah, he can still pass rush, right? He can still get around the edge a little bit, but like this this wasn't being done to like necessarily revolutionize their pass rush because they're still like top five in pressures even since Aiden's been gone. So
Yeah.
like they're okay with whatever plan they've been using for pass rush since he went down. They just wanted to create a little bit more depth in this defensive line rotation, and they did it the right way by adding it from the top and shifting everyone back down.
Yeah. So, and the defense has been good still without
Yeah.
Aiden Hutchinson. So it makes sense to just like, hey, let's get a guy, let's add depth. He's gonna start. I think the trade makes
Hmm.
sense. So other smaller moves around the league. Khalil Herbert goes to the Bengals for a seventh. That's adding depth with Zach Moss being out for the rest of the season. Tre'Davious White to the Ravens for a seventh. Uh, Obviously, a guy who used to be very good, but has not been healthy and effective when he has been healthy. And then Mike Williams goes to the Steelers for a fifth. Don't know why, but I feel like Mike Williams is a very Steelers wide receiver. Just seems right to me.
Yeah.
So
No, he's definitely very much in that like Plexico Burris mold.
yeah. Um, so aside from the trade deadline, we are now officially halfway through the NFL season, which it's been a fun season so far, but it's also extremely depressing that it's already halfway over with the regular season. I wanted to give out our mid-season award picks to the major awards. And this isn't like who you think is going to win it at the end of the season after 9 weeks, but if you had to give out the awards right now, who would you give it to? So, first one is MVP. Who's been your MVP through the first 9 weeks of the season?
I'm a little biased on this one, but I'm gonna give it to Jared Goff. He's just been so lights out. First 3 weeks, like okay, maybe not playing as well as he did last year. Since then, like find me a quarterback that's been more efficient than him.
I know
Like
the answer.
the guy's had like six incompletions in the last like 6 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Goff's been great. And looking at the odds right now, he's actually fourth in odds to win the award for the season.
Hmm.
I just think giving the MVP to anybody except for Lamar Jackson right now is insanity. I mean,
Yeah.
Lamar is a two-time MVP and somehow has still stepped his game up this season. He's first in total yards, yards per attempt, passer rating, touchdown rate, touchdown to interception ratio,
Yeah.
first downs per pass attempt, EPA per dropback, EPA per pass, EPA per play. He's on pace to become the first 4,000, 1,000 QB ever.
Yeah.
And there's been 5 players and 6 seasons where a quarterback has thrown 20 touchdowns and had a passer rating of 120 or better through their first 9 games. And the quarterbacks who have done it are Breeze, Aaron Rodgers twice, Peyton Manning twice, and Tom Brady in 2007. And 5 of those 6 seasons, the guy won the MVP.
Yeah.
So I like what Lamar is doing right now, I think is
No, he's
like
been incredible. Yeah.
lunacy. So I have to give it to him.
Yeah. Pump the brakes isn't the right word, but it's like when we have another guy who's playing like at an insane level of efficiency, like I I have to split hairs somewhere, right? And where I'm splitting hairs is you also have a running back who's probably going to run for 2,000 yards. So,
You're
like,
where you're splitting hairs is that Goff is the starting quarterback for the Lions.
yes, but
But
let's also not ignore the fact that like Derrick Henry is probably going to hit 2,000 yards this year.
yeah, but you also can't ignore the fact that the Lions have better offensive weaponry than the Ravens do. all around, like Derrick Henry might be
Yeah.
a better weapon than any one guy on the Lions, but we're also talking about
Yeah.
Monty Gibbs, Amon
Right.
Ra. So like,
Well, that's why it's splitting hairs.
yeah,
So
I
like,
don't think that you win MVP though without like you're not going to put up crazy stats like both these guys have been putting up
no,
without having that offensive weaponry around you because it's
no,
not
no,
just
for
Henry in
sure.
Baltimore
Yeah.
either. Like Zay Flowers has taken the next step.
Yep.
Mandrews has come along. Like they're adding more pieces for
Yeah.
him, but
Yeah. Mandrews finally looks healthy.
yeah. Um, Speaking of Derrick Henry though, offensive player of the year, any any argument that it's not Derrick Henry? Are you going to pick
Yeah.
like David
No,
Montgomery or someone from the Lions?
it's Penei Sewell.
Obviously. Duh.
No, it's got to be Derrick Henry.
What
Like,
other offensive lineman has a lateral catch this year? Show me the rushing yards. Yeah. No, I agree and I think like for me I have Lamar as MVP and Derrick Henry as offensive player of the year right now and kind of makes sense when you look at like how far ahead Baltimore is in offensive DVOA from the rest of the
yeah,
league. Uh, Derrick Henry leads the league in scrimmage yards, 1,145 right now. Second
yeah,
is Saquon with 1,071. He leads the NFL in touchdowns with 13. Second is Kyron Williams with 10. I think this backfield is everything that I thought a Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry backfield could and would be. And I just it just pisses me off that their game against Kansas City was so early in the season before
yep,
they really started ingratiating these guys into this new offense because
yeah.
I want to see it now.
I honestly can't wait until the playoffs when they decide to run the ball 6 times.
I hate it so much. Fucking hate this so much. Uh Defensive player of the year. I I think you're going to be really happy with where I went for defensive player of the year. Who did you pick?
I mean, I feel like it's got to be TJ Watt.
So I did not pick TJ Watt through 9 games. I picked Aiden Hutchinson. And obviously he's not going to win it this
Yeah,
season. But I think through the first 9 games of the season, if I look at like who's been the most impactful defensive player,
yeah.
that I can still make a case that it was Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh, yeah. No, it was his to lose.
Yeah, but well, I mean, even now though, even he's played five
Right.
games, and everybody else has played 8 or 9, and he is still third in hurries, fourth in sacks, and second in pressures. And he's played 3 or 4 less games than everybody else. Like
Yeah,
that's insane. So like it's it just makes me like I am not a Lions fan. I like the Lions. I'm rooting for the Lions to win the Super Bowl this year. But Matt is the Lions homer. And I was just looking at this today and I'm like, God, what could this season have been for Aiden
yeah,
Hutchinson if he didn't have that freak injury? Because
yeah,
he's second in pressures and he's played 5 games. And I think it's Trey Hendrickson, who's number one, has played 9 games.
yeah.
And he's only ahead of Aiden Hutchinson by 2.
What's wild about like what he was doing before he got hurt is that like he he was getting so many pressures that it was like until that like 4 sack game or 3.5, whatever it was, like it was almost disappointing how many sacks he was getting because like he was constantly on the quarterback.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone be that relentless.
I'm going to say that same thing about my defensive rookie of the year in a way. And I guess we could just go there next. I had offensive rookie of the year written down
All
next,
right,
but
who you got?
I have Jared Verse
Yep.
for defensive rookie of the year. So, like, kind of to that exact point you were just making about like someone who gets a ton of pressures but just doesn't have the sack numbers. Jared Verse is ninth in pressures this season in the entire NFL. He's eighth in QB knockdowns and eighth in hurries, but he only has 3.5 sacks right now. And it just strikes me as someone who, like, when he starts finishing or when that first step just gets like a tiny bit, like a blink quicker, and he gets to the quarterback and like wraps him up and finishes, that like his sack numbers are going to explode.
Yeah, he has been everything that I kind of expected that he would be. He just needs that little bit of extra time to like learn how to finish a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, I I was gonna pick him, and I want a different direction, not necessarily because I think they are going to win it. And I think honestly, if someone is deserving it, most deserving it probably is Jared Verse. Uh, but a guy that has not been talked about very much this year that I think needs to probably be talked about more. It's Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, second in tackles among rookies, but he's got, 2.5 sacks, which is third among rookies. Got a forced fumble and recovery. Like he's their best linebacker. He's Green Bay's best linebacker as a rookie. I mean, I think he's only going to continue to get better. I think he's probably going to finish the year probably pretty strong and add more to it. But like I feel like he got overlooked a little bit in the draft coverage, but like he's just really, really fucking good at playing that position.
Quinion Mitchell was also someone I thought about because
Hmm.
he's just one of those guys that's like doesn't have a ton of stats because they're not throwing at
It's
him.
it, and it's hard when you are being put on like the other team's best guy. You'd love to like take the ball away, but you're a rookie in the NFL going against the other team's number one, like 9 times out of 10, you're probably playing ball denial, right? Like, so you're not going to have a lot of interceptions, because for you to get those interceptions with your level of experience, you're going to have to take some pretty big risks, and that's a good way for you to get benched. So,
Yeah, but he's been very good in
oh yeah.
coverage. Just like
Hmm.
coverage is not something that shows up in the box score, except for the
No.
fact that like the other team's best guy didn't have a good game. And they're like,
Yep.
oh, that's weird. That's a down game for that guy. And it's like, well, when everybody starts having a down game against the Eagles,
Yeah.
it might be a sign. Um, Offensive rookie of the year, there I think is obviously no question here that it is Drake May. He is wait, no, it's Jaden Daniels. It has to be Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
He's minus 1,400 to win the award right now,
Yep.
and he's fifth at MVP odds. So I think there's no question. I think the most interesting question with offensive rookie of the year is like, God forbid, say Jaden Daniels tore his ACL in practice tomorrow
Yeah.
and was done for the season. Who would win this award? Because like Drake has been awesome for the Patriots
Hmm.
and just had like a jaw dropping play to tie the game against the Titans on Sunday, but has not played enough football and will not win probably any games this season with how shitty that team is. Uh,
Right.
Caleb has been disappointing, I would say, as a rookie. The whole Chicago Bears, I think they're kind of falling apart right now at the seams. So, like, you have BTJ has probably been the best rookie receiver to this point. Like, is it him? Marvin Harrison's got a bunch of touchdowns. Malik Neighbors has been good. Brock Bowers is tight end one in fantasy right now and is like on pace to set the rookie catch record as a tight end. So I think like that's more of a debate is like if Jaden Daniels was gone, who would win it? But yeah, right now there's absolutely no question of who it's been to this point because he's been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we're gonna play that game, I think it would have to be BTJ. I mean, he's got the most receiving yards. He's got 5 receiving touchdowns. which I believe is most among rookies right now. I could be wrong, but um,
I think Marv has 5 as well, if I'm not mistaken.
possible, but he certainly doesn't have the yards.
No.
So, um, yeah, that is not
Yeah,
how we
Marvin's
foresaw this season going.
no. Marvin's at 445 yards, 5 touchdowns. But I
Yeah.
I would say that in a way it is how we foresaw this season going because smart dynasty fantasy football players that we are, we traded up in the draft to acquire BTJ when the people around us were like, oh, we're fine just like taking Xavier Worthy and Lad McConkey with your pick. It was like, okay, you can have them. We want this guy. This guy is good. And we talked about this in our pre-draft coverage that a lot of people were like, this is a 3 receiver draft. It's Marvin Harrison, Romo Dunze, and Malik Neighbors. And both of us were like,
Yep.
well, hold on, because this is a 4 receiver draft. And
Yeah.
whoever gets this guy in the late teens or early 20s is absolutely getting a steal. And it's played out that way so far.
Yeah.
Good year for my guys. We just talked about Jared Verse, Quinion Mitchell, and BTJ,
Yeah.
who are all on our my
Um,
guys list.
we haven't even talked about Fisk.
Braden, literally Aaron
Yeah.
Donald Fisk, has actually been
Yeah.
very good for
Second,
the
right
Rams.
behind Jared Verse among rookies in sacks with 3 sacks.
Yeah. Um, Bucky Irving was on the my guys list
Yep.
for me. Been very good. So yeah, good. I mean, every year it shouldn't be surprising. People, if you're in college right now and you're thinking about entering the NFL draft, and you would like to pay us to put you on our my guys list, because I don't know what's more likely is like, are we just really good at scouting and finding guys who are going to be good, or are the guys that we name on the list just it just makes them good because they were on our list? If you guys would like to pay us and find out, email us fouledoutsports@gmail.com and we'll put you on our my guys list because we can be bought.
You know what's funny is what it really is that we are like a good quarterback or cornerback and have a very short memory for our bad ones
No, but I
and just completely move on from it.
I went back
Never bring it up again.
before I went back before my guys this year and I made the my guys all-star team,
Hmm.
and like we literally could field a lineup of guys that we've picked over the last 4
Yeah.
years that are like all good at every position.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, we did say offensive line has been rough on that, but in fairness, with the change in coaching staff, Ike Ekwonu looking a lot better.
yeah.
So like, all right, we got something there, but yeah, there's been a few rough misses that we just don't talk about.
Yeah, but when Trey Lance takes over as quarterback for the Cowboys and is very, very good, which is the only outcome that can happen this season, then we will not have as many bad misses. Do we need to talk about coach of the year or comeback player of the year? I wrote down Dan
I,
Quinn for coach of the year.
yeah.
They were 4-13 last year and now they're 7-2. But
Hmm.
the one question I had was how many games do Andy Reid or Dan Campbell have to win before it's like, okay, like, is it 15? Like, what if the Lions are 15-2? Or like the Chiefs are like 16-1? Washington is like 13-4, but it's just like, yeah, like that Andy Reid just won 16 games. How are you going to say no? Um, and then comeback player, I had Kirk Cousins. I think he's been very impressive coming off of
Yeah.
the torn
Yep.
Achilles as a 35-year-old quarterback or whatever.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right. America's most favorite segment, bolds and scolds for week 9 of the NFL season. Do you know whose turn it is to go first this week?
Not remotely.
God, I have no idea. I'll go first because my bold is very short. My bold for week 9 is Eagles running back Saquon Barkley. He jumped over a guy backwards this week. Like, that's it. That's all I have to say about it. I know he had a great game. He had a lot of yards. He scored a touchdown. He literally he hurdled a guy backwards, and the guy was basically standing upright.
Yeah.
I encourage you to go watch the play if somehow you haven't seen it already. He literally was had his back to the guy and jumped over him. Bold, bold Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. Well, I think the best thing about this choice is that it is both a bold and a scold at the same time.
The guy who
Like,
got jumped over.
well, that too, but also like, really, New York, you're telling me that this wouldn't have helped you? Like, Jesus Christ.
Dude, I will say Tyrone Tracy is
Yeah.
really
You,
good.
yeah. Think about having two of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, as good as Tyrone Tracy has been, he has not jumped over a
no.
guy backwards this season. So,
Yes. But what about second running back?
what about second guy who jumps over people backwards? Ooh. Oh, good God. Western was down 21-14 at half and started the second half with an awesome touchdown drive. And then they were all celebrating and they kicked it off to Northern Illinois, who promptly took the kickoff back for a touchdown. I was like,
That is Western Michigan football, baby.
we have not only reached peak Western Michigan football, but we have reached peak Wednesday night Maction here
Yeah.
on the Fouled Out podcast. So, uh, all right, who is your bold for week 9?
Mine is less extravagant, but I think it was important for this player, nonetheless vital for their career. Bryce Young
Hmm.
played a good game and looked like an actual NFL quarterback. He didn't look anything like Jaden Daniels, right? Not saying anything crazy about him, but like he played in a way where I could see him continuing to play in the NFL and potentially someday making himself a starter in the NFL. Uh, wasn't perfect, right? There were a couple of balls that should have been picked off. Ironically, the ball that was picked off should have been a catch, but the receiver just gave it away. Um, so,
So
um,
I'm listening to you, but I'm also looking at what's going on my TV with Western Michigan.
yeah,
Like, I just made a face that made Matt laugh because Western gets the ball back after the kick return touchdown and instantly throws a horrific interception to a linebacker whose last name is Dolphin, which could only happen to Western Michigan. NIU will score here and make it 35-21. And for most teams, that would be a backbreaker. But this game will be 35-35 or 42-42 soon. I promise.
yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, I thought Bryce Young uh, played well, especially for him. They
Yeah,
obviously they won the game, which is going to take me into my scold. But
yeah,
I'm kind of excited to watch the Panthers the rest of the season because they get Jonathan Brooks back now. I think they just activated him, or like his practice window is
yeah,
starting here soon where they have to have him practice. And I kind of am excited to see what they can do with him based on how good Chuba Hubbard has been this
yeah,
season, because Jonathan Brooks is way more talented than Chuba Hubbard. No offense to Hubbard, who I like, but
yeah.
uh I'm kind of excited to see what he can do. And like Xavier Legette has like really come on the last couple weeks as well.
I I thought it was interesting that they didn't, given that they had already opened the practice window for Brooks, that they didn't try to get something for Hubbard. But obviously with him coming off the injury, they probably really, really wanted to play that safe. So,
I mean,
but
you
yeah,
probably could have got another fourth from Dallas. Like at this
might maybe
point,
maybe a first,
who wouldn't Dallas give you a fourth for?
honestly.
I don't know if there's like the fact that someone got a fourth. Like, this is why I say I don't understand player value, because Carolina just got a fourth for Jonathan Mingo and got absolutely nothing for Deontay Johnson, who's better than Jonathan Mingo. And
Like by a lot.
I know people are gonna email us and be like, Mingo is younger and he's cost controlled, and Deontay Johnson's a knucklehead and people don't like him. But like, how do you get a fourth for Jonathan Mingo and a fourth for Trey Lance? I really just feel like Dallas is just like we never want to draft in the fourth round ever again.
Like
Four is the number of death in Japan, and we refuse to pick
if
somebody in the fourth.
if you put Jonathan Mingo in this draft with the tape that he's put up in the NFL, no one would spend a fourth round pick on him. Like
I really just feel like we're gonna see Jerry Jones with his new advisor Kakashi-san, and like four is a very bad number in Japanese culture. It's the number of death, and they're like, no, like you cannot pick in the fourth. They're like, okay, we'll trade him all away for whoever wants him. Bryce Young beating the Saints actually takes me into my scold
yep.
for week 9. Mine is Derek Carr. I sent you that he was my scold with no context, so I don't know if you know
Yeah.
what this is about truly, but Derek Carr became the first quarterback in NFL history this week to lose to 31 different NFL teams. No quarterback had ever
Yeah.
lost to more than 30 NFL teams. He has now lost to 31 thanks to this loss to the Panthers. The only team he has not lost to is the Raiders, who he played for 9 seasons. The Saints play the Raiders this season, week 17, December 29th. Definitely
Just
something
gotta
I'll be watching.
do it for the memes, man.
Yes. So aside from that, there was also a stat going around showing which quarterbacks had the most losses through X amount of seasons in their career. And this is where it truly gets phenomenal. This is like my favorite scold of the season. Most losses through 4 seasons is David Carr with 43. Most losses through 5 seasons, David Carr with 53. Most losses through 6 seasons, David Carr with 56. Most losses through 7 seasons, Derek Carr, the younger brother, with 63. Through 8 seasons, it's Derek Carr with 70. 9 seasons, it's Derek Carr with 79. 10 seasons, it's Derek Carr with 87. The most losses through 11 seasons, which is where we are now. He's halfway through his 11th season. He has already tied Archie Manning at 91 losses. So with his next loss as a starting quarterback, he will take over most losses through 11 seasons as a starter, and he still has 8 games to play this year. Want it to get even better, Matt? It's going to get even better. The all-time record for most losses by a quarterback in NFL history is Vinny Testaverde, who had 134 losses in 233 games played. Derek Carr is 43 losses away from the all-time record at the ripe age of 33. He has at least 2 years left with the Saints based on how horrible his contract is. And as we mentioned earlier, the Saints are now going into, we are going to be complete dog shit mode
Yep.
for the next few seasons while we reset this cap. Calling it a cap disaster is probably not dramatic enough to describe what's gone on in New Orleans over the last
Yeah.
couple seasons.
No, it's
A captastrophe.
the
It's cap.
English language doesn't have a word for it.
I'm going to call it a captastrophe. It's catastrophic. But they're going to be dog shit for the foreseeable future. And he could still potentially start 42 more games with the Saints. This is doable, Matt. This is this is an all-time NFL record that Derek Carr can achieve if he just sets his mind to it and possibly gets one more contract to start somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you sent me that, especially in the wake of like some of the talking points that had been going on surrounding Derek Carr at that point in time, I was like, I don't know which way this is coming So we're
Yeah.
gonna this will be interesting.
Aside
Um,
from aside from all that though, he threw an absolute hospital ball to Chris Olave
yeah,
again.
yeah.
And
No, it
yeah.
was it was a bad throw, right? Um, Not gonna defend that, but like some of the discourse surrounding that is just completely unacceptable. Like, you know full and well that he didn't intend to throw that ball poorly, right? Like, you also know full and well that like unfortunately plays like that happen every single week in the NFL. So to isolate that one instance and then like take shots at the person's character because of that, like that reflects more on you than it does on the player.
Oh God, no, he definitely didn't do it on purpose. It's just like this is
It,
the I
yeah,
think the third concussion Olave's had in the NFL, and
yeah,
two of them came on bad passes. But no, my scold has nothing to do with Derek Carr as a person. It
yeah,
purely has to do with him as a loser quarterback.
yeah. No, like he's to put it nicely, he's extremely mid.
He lose game,
Um,
good at
and
lose.
like the the Saints have gone out of their way over the last 5 years to continue to build a mid roster that you cannot win games with a mid quarterback. You know, it's just like this situation was bound to be what it is. They've kicked this can really far down the road, and now they're like shocked that they have to deal with it.
Yeah, I think the Saints have the same problem the Pats do. I mean, obviously the Saints is to a way worse degree, but I, your all-time quarterback leaves and you're like, no, we're still going to be good. No, just don't. Just be bad. It's fine. You just be bad for a little bit. It's okay. Rebuild. But the Patriots kicked the can down the road, and so like the Saints have like kicked the can down the road for the Saints is not a strong enough term. But
No,
and now you're starting to really pay for it. So
no, they punted that can like
they shot it into the sun. Like we're never going to see that can again.
we started talking about how wild their cap situation was like 7 years ago.
Yeah,
Like
it's not getting better anytime
I'm
soon.
not even exaggerating.
Yeah. Who should the Saints just be your scold, or do you have a scold?
Um, I do have one,
They
although
deserve they deserve it.
they deserve it. Uh, Todd Bowles.
Yes.
What the fuck are you doing, Todd Bowles?
Mm-hmm.
Go for two. Just go for two. Give yourself a chance to win.
I think
If you
there were.
don't, go ahead.
Oh, I think there were. I saw this the other day. I can't remember what the exact number was. There was three. I think three road dogs that tied the game with like less than a minute left and decided to like go to overtime instead of going for two. And all three teams went to overtime and lost, including my team, where my dad and I were screaming at the TV to go for two. They
Yeah,
refused to do it.
yeah. So if you don't know, the Bucks played Kansas City this week. Baker played a fantastic game. I mean, both quarterbacks did, but even though he hasn't done it this year, you kind of just expect it out of Mahomes. The Bucks tied up the game 24-24 with like less got it. What was it, like 30 seconds left in the game? Something like that.
Yeah, it was
And
not a lot of time left.
yeah, but Chiefs still had three timeouts. Uh Todd Bowles, instead of going for two to take the 1 point lead, he decides to take the extra point to tie it up and shoot for overtime. The thing is that if you take the lead, you have to stop them once in order to win the game. They get that stop after kicking the PAT. They lose the coin toss. And you know they would lose the coin toss because it's Patrick Mahomes. And naturally, then they have to stop Patrick Mahomes a second time. And that just doesn't happen. And so they go down, they score the touchdown, game over. And the moment that they lost the coin toss, like Baker's face is going to be a meme for the next year or so.
Yeah. No, I think that was all of our faces as soon as they lost the coin toss. It's just like, oh, okay, well, we know what's going to happen here.
I
Don't need to watch
mean,
the end of that.
yeah, the moment they kicked the extra point, I already knew what was going to happen. Like there's I either Mahomes was going to go down and get them a field goal, or they were going to win the coin toss at for overtime, and then they would score. Like it just you don't get that many extra chances against the Chiefs. It just doesn't happen.
I do feel like with Mahomes that the coin could be double sided and both sides would be heads and Baker would call heads and somehow it would still land on tails in that scenario.
Yeah,
Like that's just the Chiefs' luck. So, but yeah, it just teams' absolute refusal to take the game into their own hands, and they're just like, we're just gonna keep playing this game that we should have already lost is infuriating. But
yeah.
ooh, Western just threw a touchdown that's getting called back for ineligible receiver downfield, even though it was like a 25-yard touchdown pass. That's Bronco football, baby. All right, gambling picks for week 10. Very upset that we are now in the double digit weeks here. So last week, we got back in the black. I had mentioned last week that after a horrific week 8 where we didn't hit any bets, that we were down for the season. We are now up for the season after hitting 3 of 5 last week. Kai Fairbairn, Texans kicker, hit 2 field goals on Thursday Night Football. The second one being a very dumb field goal that I hate we're down 10 and we have the ball on the opponent's 30. Let's kick the field goal and then go for the onside kick strategy. But I loved it on Thursday because it got us the second field goal. But the Texans lost, so they did not win by 1.5. However, the Rams and the Lions both covered on the road. Good bounce back week for road favorites, going 4-1 after a horrific week 8, which is what tripped us up. But they are back. That's what we said last week. Is basically week 8 was like the throw them off the scent week, where the road favorites got crushed and then they were going to bounce back. So they did bounce back in a big way, going 4-1. But James Cook did not score any touchdowns against Miami. We had the long shot was him to score 2, so lost that one. But won 3 out of 5, positive money. We are positive for the year again and ready to roll into week 10 on a hot streak. Thursday night football this week is a absolute banger. It is Bengals at Ravens. Ravens favored by 6. Matt, what is your pick for Thursday night football?
I'm gonna stick with what I trust the most, and that is Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry things. So I'm gonna take him over 89 and a half yards. And that is minus 110.
I like that one. I I am also sticking with what I know will work, and that is Justin Tucker over 1.5 field goals, baby. We have picked the field goal prop 3 times this year on Thursday Night Football. Do you know what its record is, Matt?
3-0.
Hell yeah, it's 3-0. Justin Tucker not having a super Justin Tucker season. He's only hitting 79% of his field goals. But over the last 5 games, he's 10 of 11, which is 91%. And he has attempted at least 2 in each of the last 5 games. I expect there to be a lot of points. And
Yeah.
I think he'll hit 2 or more. McPherson, the kicker for the Bengals, is plus 100 to hit 1.5 as well. So this is minus 110. Justin Tucker over 1.5 field goals. Matt, where are you going for the weekend?
There's a team that we're not feeling very good about. And I think overall, road favorites are probably still a pretty good bet. So I'm going to take the Falcons minus 3.5 over the Saints. That is minus 112.
Type it in my handy dandy tracker. I had that one written down as an option. I am also going with a road favorite, but mine is the Lions of Detroit, Michigan, minus 3.5 at Houston, which is minus 108 right now. I would like to throw a statistic at you. Do you know what the Lions' record is against the spread since Dan Campbell has taken over?
Don't know exactly, but I know it is massive.
They are 42-17
Yeah.
against the spread, which is 71%. We talked about road favorites bouncing back. I like them as a road favorite as well. The other one I wrote down. So we're gonna cheat a little bit because we have not hit a long shot bet since week 2. Started hot weeks 1 and 2. We hit them, but since then we have not hit one. And I think the lesson here is like, yeah, you can hit plus 300 or higher every once in a while, but forcing one every week is probably not going to work out well for you. So I looked at like underdog picks. I was like, okay, what are we going to make this fifth pick? Because we got to bet $100 a week. And I was like, we should just do a podcast pick. Because my long shot bet for the week this week was Broncos money line against Kansas City because it's exactly plus 300. But I don't know how I feel about that. So, my proposal for the podcast pick is a third road favorite, and that is the Bills minus 3.5 at the Colts this weekend.
Yeah, I was looking at that game too.
Yeah, those are, I wrote down 3 in case you took the Lions.
Hmm.
And I wrote down Lions minus 3.5 versus Houston, Falcons minus 3.5 versus the Saints. It was 4 earlier, but it's 3.5 now. And then Bills 3.5 versus the Colts, which is, so the Bills are actually minus 4. So we'll go Bills minus 4 versus the Colts, which is minus 108. All right. So official picks for the weekend. We have Justin Tucker over 1.5 field goals on Thursday Night Football, Derrick Henry over 89.5 rushing yards, Lions minus 3.5 versus Houston, Falcons minus 3.5 versus the Saints, and then the Bills minus 4 versus the Colts. Still waiting for that 5-0 week, Matt. I feel like this may be it. I feel good about this one. I know I said it last week, but the fact that we don't have the long shot bet in here, I think is only increasing our odds.
Yeah, I would say that that probably helps.
Significant contributor. But all right, that is it for us. As always, Foul Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. College football this weekend. Not the most exciting weekend of college football we've ever seen. However, anytime Alabama and LSU get together, I feel like that is must-watch TV, and that is happening 7:30 on Saturday. Number 11 Alabama versus number 15 LSU. Georgia is at Ole Miss. We'll see, but yeah. But all right, my friend, you enjoy the football. We got basketball and hockey and all sorts of great stuff right now. And if anybody needs anything to do, you can go back and watch the fact that the Yankees just lost the World Series. Baseball really doesn't get better than that. I love the Yankees losing the World Series. It is, I don't know what I like more, the Red Sox winning a World Series or the Yankees losing one. They're both pretty great to me. But all right, buddy, I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye,
Robin.
Mom.